Jesus said to his disciples before he ascended to heaven, "You'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the world." So mission begins on our doorstep, but it doesn't end there. And so a church, I think in the 21st century, in a global village, needs to have local mission at the forefront, but also needs to be involved in global mission because we live in a global village. Under the basis of union, of course, we affirm the fact that the Uniting Church is part of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, that we are part of a global movement. Again, that movement that we call the Church, which is participating in the renewing of God's creation. And so at its heart, the heartbeat of the Uniting Church is to be engaged with Christian believers, not just here in Australia, but around the world. Church that's involved in global mission as well as local mission will find the two initiatives feeding off one another. They'll resource one another. What we learn as we engage as a congregation in global mission influences how we engage in local mission and vice versa. So I think it's a really healthy dynamic that's at play when we're involved in both in some way. We're caught up in God's work in the world, that we're participants in what God is doing in the world. We don't bring God with us, we go and we engage in mission and we participate in what God is already doing. And we find the abundant life that Jesus promised as we lose our life in that mission initiative. But also what we discover is that we learn things. We discover more things about ourselves, both individually and corporately. We grow as disciples as we're stretched in faith. Our lives, our communities will be transformed as we see that we're part of something much bigger than we would be otherwise. Last year, our congregation focused our mission initiatives under a banner we call our Acts 1:8 vision. What we mean by that is that we believe that God is calling us as a congregation to be involved in worship and witness and service locally, regionally, nationally and globally. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the world. And as part of that, we really said, well, where, God, are you calling us to be engaged in this way? As we looked around our own communities, we looked around our state, our nation and the world. And as we looked around our world, we were already involved in supporting a number of mission workers overseas. But we also recognised that we wanted to be engaged community to community with a partner church. And so through our connections with the Uniting World and because of some keen interest amongst some individual members of our church, we developed a relationship with the church in the Solomon Islands. The Uniting Church has a greater than 100-year history with the United Church Solomon Islands. It's a rich, rewarding, wonderful history. And so we see ourselves as continuing that journey in a very small way as one congregation of the Uniting Church. The church in the Solomon Islands really is the social infrastructure, the social glue in that region, in that nation. For example, the United Church Solomon Islands provides a majority of the healthcare services, the education services in the western province of the Solomon Islands. It's not too much to say if it wasn't for the United Church Solomon Islands that this nation, which is desperately poor, would be even worse states. But the United Church Solomon Islands doesn't just witness through practical service, it also proclaims the gospel. And so have a fantastic evangelistic ministry of reaching out with the good news of Jesus, of preaching the gospel. So for me, the great gift to me in our partnership with the United Church Solomon Islands is being inspired by people who are so resource poor by comparison with us, but so rich in God in the way in which they live out their faith 24/7. Our relationship with the church in the Solomon Islands, I'd liken to like a slow burn. It's begun slowly, it's developed steadily, and we're really comfortable with that because we see this as a long-term commitment. That slow burn has developed around relationships, around connections, around conversation. And so we've been involved in a couple of trips to the Solomon Islands. We've also hosted some visitors from the Solomon Islands in our congregation. We've been involved in each other's worship services. We've met as small groups. We've had lots of meals together. We've talked about different challenges we face in proclaiming the gospel in our own countries. We've laughed together, we've cried together, we've sung together, we've prayed together. We've done life together, and that's what partnership is about. And as we've done that, we begin to learn from one another. So it really is about being together as much as possible and recognising that, for us at least, leaving aside any paternalistic or parochial sort of interests, thinking that we have all the answers, but being prepared to come in and to learn, and learn we have.